I'm Ashton Addison from Blockwest Capital for Investment Pitch Media and the Crypto Coin Show. And today on Blockchain Interviews, we have Anistasiya Belyaeva, Head of Growth at PieDAO and co-founder at Fabric Ventures. Anastasiya, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashton. Great to be here. Excited.
You're very welcome. I'm excited to dive into PieDAO, really cool DeFi platform that I think a lot of people need to know about, and not enough people know about it yet, because you're doing some really interesting initiatives in DeFi that I think are going to become the status quo moving forward. And I would love for you to kick us off by telling us a little bit about PieDAO, what the project is about, how it came about, and what are the main solutions you're driving in the DeFi space.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely agree with you. I'd love to see it become more mainstream in the future and more people to get to know about it. Regarding the mission of PieDAO, if you think of it, traditional wealth creation mechanisms have always excluded the 99% from participation. They've always been reserved for the 1%. And I think crypto has promised to do better. And it actually did improve a bunch of things. We're seeing participation expand massively. We're seeing that way more people than before are now able to create wealth from scratch rather than having to necessarily inherit it from parents or that sort of things. But it's still extremely exclusive, as we know, and it still leaves a bunch of people behind. You still have to have prerequisites of time, of deep technical expertise and money to play with. And so what PieDAO is really trying to do is effectively create a hedge fund for the people, where the best performing asset that we have in our age is bundled into simple portfolios, something that's very easy to understand, and that gives people a way to benefit from these investments without having to dive super deeply into all of the complex DeFi things like lending, staking, yield farming, all of that stuff that's pretty complex and does require a lot of knowledge. We're trying to simplify that, package it into portfolios, and let people buy that. So that's in a nutshell.
Definitely, yeah, great intro. And you're right, there are a lot of functionalities that aren't easy, they aren't intuitive for somebody who isn't technical savvy or an expert in finance and computer code and all these different new functionalities that are amazing, but a little bit of barrier to entry for even those versed in traditional finance trying to figure out this new paradigm. Maybe you can talk about those functionalities in the PieDAO, the DAO itself, and how that's a decentralized autonomous organization, how it really distributes that wealth more fairly and allows those barriers to be lowered for people that are new to DeFi to join in.
Yeah, so that's a really great question. I'm actually a huge fan of trying to create new tools for wealth creation in new ways. I don't think you can do them as companies. I don't think you can really revolutionize the way that wealth is created by using the old structures. And so I think when you're trying to create these DeFi mechanisms, you really need to use the novel systems for them, which is DAOs. And so the way PieDAO is structured is, instead of having a handful of analysts sitting in their offices and trying to decide which assets to include, what kind of strategies to deploy, you have thousands of people distributed all over the world. Some of them are completely anonymous, actually. And I think that gives you such a depth of reach and so many different backgrounds. Somebody doesn't have to have a Cambridge or Oxford or one of the top US universities degrees to be able to get into whatever is the best hedge fund out there. No, they can be an anonymous person who's maybe in their daytime a teacher or whatever they do, but they just happen to be super deep into crypto, into the internet native asset, and they know what's happening, and they can easily get involved. So I love that. And within that ecosystem of people, there are obviously some who are more active. And so we've tried to come up with a way to incentivize active participation by actually creating, very recently, it's just launched, this new system of staking, the native governance token, where by staking it, you get the what's called veDOUGH, our staked version of the governance token. And that requires you to be an active participant. So think about it this way: your typical journey would be, you want to participate in PieDAO and govern the creation of assets. You buy DOUGH on the market, you stake it for whichever time lock period you prefer. It can be anything from 6 months to 3 years, and then by staking it, it gives you the right to participate in governance decisions. Only you have the right to do so if you have that veDOUGH token. And by doing that, you're actually earning money, right? So we're actually remunerating the efforts that people put in by distributing on a monthly basis something that is pretty much a paycheck. It comes in the form of what we call slice. And that slice contains a bunch of farmed assets, CRV, BAL, etc., sushi. So they're all liquid. They're all assets that you can trade and have your monthly income, if you will, from that. So it's kind of like a salary, really. So you're becoming, for the first time ever, what we call a full-time token holder, and you can basically quit your daytime job and start governing a DAO and just earning that money that you'll be earning from working whatever 8-10 hours a day by doing voting on a couple of issues per month and having the same paycheck coming into your wallet. So I think that's pretty cool. And what it does for PieDAO is it incentivizes active participation, because if you don't participate in at least one vote per month, then you lose that reward. So you lose that paycheck. And it's just been the first month that it's working. It's been a huge success so far. So looking forward to see how it's going to play out in the next few months.
Definitely, yeah, that's really exciting that the veDOUGH has launched. And it does sound like a dream to just be able to quit your day job and make voting in the PieDAO as your new salary. So
right.
all new DeFi users are foaming at the mouths thinking about Pi, and so that's really cool. I want to talk a little bit more about that, because there's a lot of people that are new to DeFi. They don't have a lot of capital. They see there's this new paradigm shift where now they can get involved in investing and making decisions and voting on where capital should be allocated to. You don't have to be a high net worth individual or an Oxford graduate, as you mentioned. But this is a very new concept, and it's pretty innovative. And I'm curious, and as this has just launched as well in the first month, what do you see as the benefits and the costs of having a DAO and having more people? And do you think that's going to be more efficient and better than the traditional ways of allocating capital?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. So just to clarify one thing, so PieDAO itself has been operating as a DAO for a year and a half already. So it's been a while. It's just the new kind of upgraded governance system with a staked version is a month old indeed. But I would say, obviously operating as a DAO comes with its own pitfalls, right? You have these thousands of people that you need to coordinate, and that's not easy. And that's really the biggest challenge. It's kind of, how do you make sure that you take the best out of this large community of talented people rather than just wasting it, right? I think that's the biggest problem that most DAOs face. How do you encourage participation, and how do you make sure that whatever ideas float around actually get taken over to execution? And we've been trying to come up with ways to do that. So the staked version of DAO is one way, because you obviously encourage participation by giving out that paycheck and making it dependent on active voting. And the other ways are, so just recently we've started trialing out this UMA KPI options. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's this very cool way to incentivize a community towards a specifically defined KPI. Let's say, X amount of TVL, or, it can be whatever, X amount of users in the platform. You can define it as anything that an Oracle can fetch the data for. And then you can incentivize the collective action towards that, and reward them if that milestone is reached. So that's super interesting. And we're now trialing that out. We've distributed, well, actually, we're just about to distribute the KPI tokens to a large number of holders, and then we'll see what happens. Ideally, that large community is going to create subgroups, working collectives, and run their individual coordinated activities, such as marketing campaigns, growth experiments, all of that sort of stuff to drive forward the number at hand. So we'll see how that goes, but that's definitely one of the ways. And then the last thing I'd love to mention here is just trying to come up with processes like you typically have in companies for getting stuff done. Mm-hmm. So, having a clear way that the community can propose an idea, form a group, execute it, get resources, all of that sort of stuff needs to be very clearly defined for people to be able to take action. So we're learning from mistakes every day and trying to make it as simple as possible.
Definitely. And I know you mentioned there that the DAO part has actually been live for over a year, but compared to traditional companies and internet companies, it's still in its infancy, and I feel like there's a lot that
Definitely.
still needs to be developed out to, what I would love to hear what you think DAOs will look like, 5 years from now to 10 years from now in terms of the communication and the functionality that they'll have as the future of internet organizations.
Yeah, that's definitely a very wide topic, I would say. I mean, I really believe that DAOs will take over what companies do today. I think the world that we're trying to build that is internet native has to be run by DAOs rather than centralized companies. And I would love to see that happen more. And obviously, DAOs need to transform themselves, come up with more ways that these communities can really organize themselves. Right now, we obviously have some of the tools out there, like Aragon, for example, that allows for a bunch of these things to happen. But I'm sure we'll need more and more, like we're now experiencing with PieDAO. So we're trying to introduce these things like KPI options. Like for example, in typical companies, you usually have these OKR meetings, and people try to allocate what everyone is focusing on and targeting specific numerical goals each quarter. And so I think similar things will need to be introduced in DAOs so that that large community can go towards a common goal. And that needs to be done on a token economic way that is measurable, that is rewardable. And so I think more and more stuff will happen there. And then obviously I would love to see more improvements on the legal side and trying to make sure that DAOs can actually operate as entities that don't need any legal standing. And we're seeing, of course, like DAOs being recognized as such in some jurisdictions, but I think more of that will be important to see in the future.
Definitely. I completely agree. And I feel like that's sort of the same boat for, Bitcoin back in the day when it first came out, and then all of a sudden it starts building on the traction, and then it eventually it becomes the norm adopted by countries, and then it becomes the standard. And we'll see that for DAOs as well as companies. Is it a traditional company or is it a DAO? And I feel like, and I hope that they'll be, equivalent.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and you talked a little bit at the beginning about the veDOUGH, the DOUGH staking platform, which is great in the new edition, but I know that PieDAO has so many other functionalities. Like there's so many different things you can do as a DeFi user. And I would love if you could touch on some of the other finance functions that new users can use on top of staking the veDOUGH.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of the cool products that we have launched that are more suited for the novice users. Because what I've described before is more, I guess, for the veterans of crypto, people who really know the strategies very well. They can govern a DAO. They can help curate where its future is going. So that's one side. And then on the other side, we have products that are oriented to more new crypto users, those who are aware of what's going on. They know how to use the wallet. They know how to trade, but they're just not that deep to know what exactly to invest in. They may not have a ton of capital. So for those kinds of users, we have things like, for example, the Oven, which is an infrastructure we've created to allow users to effectively pull resources together and mint their new pies. Pies are the portfolios, as we call them, together, and then share the cost of the transaction, as obviously gas can be pretty expensive these days. And so that tends to save them about 97% of the cost today. So it's pretty easy to get your hands on one of the portfolios by using the Oven. So that's one thing. And in general, we have currently 8 products, I believe, live out there. So 8 portfolios. They range from the very diversified, very kind of risk-averse BCP, which involves BTC, ETH, and a balanced portfolio of DeFi tokens. So you have something like that. And on the other end of the spectrum, you can have something more niche like Play, for example, which has been users' favorite for a while. It's a portfolio of metaverse tokens. So it includes gaming, NFT, everything within that ecosystem. So yeah, I would encourage your listeners to go check it out.
Definitely. Thank you, Anastasiya. And I know, veDOUGH just came out. That's a huge project, and it's only going to continue to grow. I'm curious if that's the focus moving forward towards the end of this year and into 2022, or are there other things up your sleeve that you may be able to mention as well?
Yeah, so we'll definitely be rolling out more pies as we go. There's a couple in progress. we're exploring more and more solutions to make things cheaper, and so exploring layer 2 solutions and things like that. We have a couple pies in mind that are focused on governance overall, and so DAO platforms kind of combining in one portfolio everything that's related to DAOs and governance. There's a bunch of things like that in discussions right now, but we're also looking a lot onto improving what we've just launched with veDOUGH, just because it's obviously not a thing that you release and forget about it. There's a bunch of things to be done, and so we're trying to make sure that the revenues that the DAO is generating are more and more interesting for the users. Just because part of what the veDOUGH holders are receiving as their monthly paycheck is actually the revenues that the entire DAO is making, including what it farms with the treasury. So we have part of the treasury deployed in yield farming. So we're working very heavily on improving the performance of the treasury farming committee that is choosing the strategies, and we're trying to make sure that performance continues to be above targets each month, which so far has been happening. So that's pretty great. And that obviously, improving that, make sure that you can attract more talented individuals to govern the DAO and push it forward. And so that's kind of the entire loop that creates. We're also trying to create more, encourage more kind of like self-driving working groups. And so we're trying to come up with ways to incentivize that and create these kind of community initiatives that are run by individual members. So we're spending more time on giving them the resources to do so and improving the processes. So these are some of the things, I guess, very meta things that we're trying to improve that I think will make a big difference in the long term for the DAO.
Very cool. I'm excited to follow along with those updates as they come out. And for the viewers as well that are looking to follow along and just to use some of the 8 products that your team has out right now, what's the best way for users to learn more, to start using PieDAO, and to get involved in the communities as well?
Yeah, I mean, the best way would be to go to PieDAO.org. Everything is right in there. So you guys can check out the products, as I mentioned, the pies. You can see what's happening now with veDOUGH. You can actually test out how much you can make per month by voting within the PieDAO system. So there's a simulator that you can use to kind of model that out. And then also within there's a link to our Discord, and all the best discussions happen in there. So I would definitely encourage your community to join in and start contributing.
Great. Thank you, Anastasiya. I will leave all those links in the description box below as well. All the best with PieDAO moving forward, and let's follow up in the near future.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ashton. Really enjoyed it.